Hey there, this is Lou, and this is a special little mini series I've decided to include in my podcast about using your intuition in business. So, I've gone ahead and interviewed two women and one non binary human to talk about their take on intuition in business. In this episode, I'm speaking with Ros from Shaping Change, and Ros is going to tell us about her experience leaving corporate and how she blends data-driven decisions with intuition. Thank you for stepping into this special series about intuition with me. This is something just a little extra I decided to do to support my community here. After this mini series, we'll go back to speaking about websites and marketing. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to making the internet beautiful with your presence. Hi, everyone, and welcome back. This is another part in the series of talking about using intuition in your business, how it might show up for you, and some practical tips on how you might be able to apply it. And in this episode, our guest will be Ros, and Ros is going to tell us about her take on where intuition might fit in with your business and getting things working. So, hi,
Hi, lovely to meet you.
great to have you on here. So, in order to get started, could you tell us a little bit about you and the kind of work that you do?
Sure. So I have a human resources and organizational development background. So I've been around the industry since the late 1980s. So I'm feeling quite old now when I say that. Can't
Mm,
believe it was like 50 years ago. So my background has always been in that sort of human resources people space, and organizational development is always a really interesting portfolio because you carry sort of strategy, organizational culture, leadership development, and a lot of the really fun people stuff. Most of it's really about understanding people and how they work and what happens when you introduce them into organizations. And then in 2012, I quit my corporate job and started my own business. And really, it's been so much fun because I just get to play with all this, how do people work? That's my day job now, which I just
mm.
love.
Yeah, wow, that's so good. It sounds like you got a head start amongst a lot of us because a lot of people felt like 2020 was the time to quit corporate and do their own thing.
Yeah. I did it really because look, the organization I was working for was heading for a merger with another company, and it was still 2 years out at that stage, but they'd stopped doing all the fun stuff. They sort of wound back on, culture and leadership development and team building and anything really in my portfolio. So I started to get a bit bored really quickly and kind of went, I don't think I can do this for 2 more years.
Hmm,
So yeah, took the opportunity to bail a bit early.
that's really good. Good on you. Yeah, and I'm glad you can come on and talk about this stuff because I feel like corporate life is a bit dull and boring, and it's led by masculine energies and things like that. And I just sort of feel like I understand that we've got jobs to do and money to make, but we're still human beings, and I want to still feel like I'm a human in this space. Can you relate to
Mm.
that?
Absolutely. And I actually started a project back in 2016 around exactly that because I was seeing so many brilliant women opting to get out of corporate like I did because the system wasn't working for them anymore. And they'd
Mm,
reached a career point where they, looked at it and went, I actually don't want the life of an executive. I don't want to be a CEO because of the expectations and demands and the fact that I'll never see my kids, that kind of thing.
mm,
And so I started exploring that in 2016, and in 2018 developed a model for women in leadership, and it's now been used by over 10,000 women in 98 countries, which is pretty awesome. But it's the whole basis of the model is about redefining leadership for women, and also
mm,
which is something we yet to get a huge amount of traction on, but redesigning workplaces. But what I'm finding is that people in corporates, particularly men, are very invested in the way things currently are because it works for them.
yeah.
And you've got to wait till you get enough senior women in influential positions in organizations who can start saying there is a different way of doing this before we start to really get traction. And I read really depressingly that apparently we're going to have a man on Mars before we have women in equal representation in senior leadership, which is,
Okay.
I know. It's yeah, it's kind of depressing. And you look at where all the millionaires are focusing their money and attention is putting men on Mars, and you're kind of like this, all these problems on Earth we should be solving first. Anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. For a lot of them, the glory and the fame and the big numbers and big achievements come before everything else.
Mm, mm. Yeah. And that's the challenge is that until we get that sort of critical mass of women uh, in positions of influence where they can make changes, it won't change because people are so invested in the way that it currently is. And the trouble that we're having is that a lot of women are exiting because they're looking
Mm.
at it and going, I just don't want to fight that fight. I don't think I've got it
Yeah.
in myself and start my own business or join a charity or start sitting on boards or whatever it looks like and finding their own beautiful space doing what they love but to the
Mm.
detriment of organisations because there's no one there to keep shouting about things need to change.
Yeah, yeah. I think many of us who've worked in corporate before have faced that challenge where leadership are so dead set on this is the way it's always been, we have to do it this way.
Mm. Yeah, and we saw that disappointingly post-COVID. Like during COVID, it almost felt like we took this quantum leap forward where we were allowing people to work from home and work
Mm.
flexibly and, all the things that we know work for human beings. And then it's been wound back by a lot of organizations. It's been this, you've got to come back to the office. And
Yeah.
it's been interesting because Fair Work have actually tested that a few times and found in favor of the employee and said there's actually no reason why you're making this person go back to the office other than you just want them to.
Mm.
But that's again the system, this sort of idea that we all have to, be in an office in order to be productive. And I really thought we'd blown that myth out of the water during COVID, but apparently it still exists.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Fortunate for us though, we do have our own businesses and work for ourselves, so that's good. Nobody's telling me that I should be in an office.
Yeah. Yes, my husband was also a consultant for about 7 years, and he went back to an office a few months ago now because he sort of got to the point, he's very extroverted, and he said, I just miss having been part of a big team and having people around
Mm.
all the time. So he got a job and he's gone back to the office. So he leaves home at like 6:30 in the morning because they start at 7 and they finish early. But I sort of look at that and go, God, I could not do that.
Yeah.
Couldn't do that. I just couldn't cope with the structure and the lack of flexibility.
Yeah, yeah, true. And yeah, you also get to decide if you want to participate in social groups or not. So for me, yeah, obviously I'm a freelance consultant. I work on my own by myself, but I have a group of women that I catch up with once or twice a month at a cafe. And we don't necessarily talk about business stuff, but we can do, but we otherwise, just act like humans with a common interest that we have our own businesses.
Hmm. And I think that's it, isn't it? Which is finding our tribe and surrounding ourselves with people who are on the same path or have got the same purpose or the same passion as us. And you can find that anywhere. It doesn't have to be in an office.
Mm,
And people can be incredibly productive as long as they've got purpose. You do find that you see people with amazing hobbies who are so incredibly productive because they're doing what they love. And that's the key. We need to get back to doing what we love, things that we enjoy, things we get something out of. And then we're doing it because it's joyful, not because we have to, not because we're exchanging our labor in return for a
yeah,
paycheck.
yeah. And I know this might sound cliche, but I've been hearing it a lot lately and using it more. And the phrase is life's too short. Like life's too short to not be able to explore all the possibilities of having a better experience in life.
100% agree with that. Part of my, going back a little bit further from when I left my job, part of the push to do that was that I got cancer. And when you've got cancer and, your first thing you think when somebody tells you that is you're going to pass, this is the end of my life. I've just had all these regrets about all these things I wanted to do that I hadn't done yet. And that was when I really sort of grasped that life is too short philosophy and went, if I want to do something, I'm just going to go and do it because, I may not get the chance to do it if I wait until the right time because there's never going to be a right time. There's always reasons.
Hmm. Yeah, so true. So anyway,
Mhm.
we're on here to talk about intuition. So could you tell us? How would you define that, and how would you perhaps apply that in what you're doing?
So let's sort of take a step into, I guess, the neuroscience and the psychology of it, because intuition is a real thing.
Hmm.
That's, I suppose, one of the first myths to kind of put to bed is people kind of think that intuition or gut feel is something that's a little bit airy-fairy and it can't be defined and therefore it's not a thing, which
Hmm.
is why organizations reject it so much. But what it is a combination of your brain's pattern recognition. So your brain is looking at something and going, I've seen this pattern before. I may not be able to articulate exactly what I'm looking at, but I've seen the pattern.
Yeah.
You bring in your lived experience, which is, obviously we've all got different experiences. Your emotional intelligence is a big part of it, particularly when it comes to people. When you're looking at, when you get that vibe, you
Hmm.
look at somebody, you go, you get a vibe. Sometimes you get that creepy vibe, sometimes you get that sort of really lovely vibe about someone. And that's your emotional intelligence kicking in and telling you something that,
Hmm.
your body's seeing something that you haven't been able to articulate. And also your nervous system kicks in as well. It's, when you get that sort of anxious feeling about something, that is all of those four things kind of bundled up make up intuition. So it really is a very much a visceral body experience that our brain hasn't been able to quite articulate yet.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, that I think there's got to be something there, whether you believe in God or not, or whether you believe in cosmic energy of the universe. There is something there, and maybe we can't necessarily measure it in the same way we'd measure light or weight or distance, but just because we can't measure it doesn't mean it's not there. And you can certainly argue that you could relate this to animal instincts. Animals
Mm.
can sense things that we don't have instruments to detect. So there are things there.
Mm. Absolutely. Like you hear those stories of natural disasters where all the animals disappear. They
Mm.
all the birds fly off and all the animals caged animals start panicking long before the event actually happens.
Yeah.
And it's because there's something there in the, I suppose, the collective unconsciousness. They feel something, they experience something. And as humans, a lot of times we've disconnected from that because
Mm.
particularly in workplaces, it's not valued. I mean, I certainly know in my working life, I've often had really good gut feels about something,
Yeah.
intuitive nudge. And you say that to somebody and they go, where's the business case? And it's like, well,
Yeah.
A, I haven't got one, and B, they're really boring. But it's that thing of you've always got to back it up with, where's the science, where's the data, where's the numbers that
Hmm.
tell us this is true. And I think businesses miss a lot of opportunities because they wait too long to find the data before they move on something. It's like when
Mm.
when AI very first, I mean, not AI has been in a very basic form, been around for a long time, but when
Yeah.
ChatGPT first launched back in, would have been 2023, I think it was, a couple of years
Yeah.
ago now. And when I saw it and just sort of started to read about it, I went, actually, that's really interesting. And that was my intuitive nudge to kind of lean into exploring that world. What can those sorts of tools do? How can they be used? And obviously, there's good and bad in them. So we're not sort of here to debate the use of AI. But for me, that was a really intuitive nudge to go, this could be a real game changer for the world.
Mm.
And I need to understand it, whether I choose to use it or not, but I need to understand how it works and understand how it's going to change industries and change business. And,
Mm.
for me, that was a real intuitive nudge and one of those examples, I think, of where I've leaned into it. And it's been something that's been really valuable for me, that understanding more about how all of these things work.
Mm. Cool. Yeah, that's a really great example.
Because I'm not a tech person at all. I'm not a, computer nerd, but it's just when I started reading about it, I just got that intuitive nudge that there's something in this. This could change the world and could change the way we work. And it's proven to be that. It's proven to be a, massive game changer. Mm.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think the thing with intuition, though, is you've got to be aware of the difference between intuition and fear,
Mm.
because intuition, it's a bit different. So I've sort of got a three-step process that I use, I suppose. And when I sort of feel that, a gut feel about something, the first thing I sort of do is check in and go, is this actually fear? How
Mm.
does it actually feel for me? Because is it intuition or is it my nervous system trying to keep me safe? And so I do that sort of check in, like, how does my body feel? Am I sort of breathing normally or is my breath a bit shallow? Do I feel a bit tight in my chest? What's my heart rate doing? And that will often tell me whether or not this is an intuitive pull, whether it's my nervous system particularly if the intuition is saying no to something, is it my nervous system just trying to keep me safe? And if my
Mm.
body's feeling really, really active, it's probably a caution thing, not a clarity thing, because intuition feels really grounded. And then I do just a pause and kind of ask myself, what pattern am I not recognizing yet? What's my brain trying to tell me that I haven't quite tapped into? And I just sort of pause and just let that sort of almost like let the subconscious data kind of come up. It's
Mm.
a bit hard to explain how it works, but it really does. You
Yeah.
sort of really like you lean into it and go, what am I missing here? What's the pattern? What's the data that should be here that I'm not seeing? And then I use a final check, which is really values alignment, which is if I took out the emotion and took out the ego, would I still support this choice? And that's a really
Mm.
interesting one to sort of go, if you took out the emotion and because you're not trying to rationalize the instinct, you're really just testing for is this something that's congruent with my values? If I
Mm.
sort of stripped away those sorts of things, would I still choose to do it? And I find it really does serve me well because intuition is really a strategic asset.
Yeah.
And it's not really a soft skill. It's sort of pitched as well, it's not even pitched as a soft skill. It's pitched as a, fluffy thing that we should try and pretend to ignore. But it's a strategic asset. It really is because you find with really visionary thinkers, really big picture thinkers, what they're picking up on is their intuitive nudge or their intuitive pull. And they're
Mm.
leaning into it rather than leaning out of it. And you
Yeah.
often find, and I'm sure you've met them, really visionary people, but they can't explain how they got to somewhere. They're saying, we need to do this. And everyone says, how do you know? And they're like, I don't know, I just know. And there's things in there, there's patterns there. They just can't articulate what that looks like. And so it's an incredible strategic skill because it can take you leaps and bounds ahead of the competition because it's telling you something interesting and useful.
Mm.
So it's actually quite a fun thing to play with intuition. I really enjoy it actually. It's one of my fun spaces. What's my gut telling me?
Yeah. That's really good. And I like the way you explain it. It sounds like you could use this in situations where you're feeling indecisive and you don't know which way you want to go with something.
Absolutely. It's that check-in, for the fear. Is my gut, is this intuition being contaminated by fear? And if there's no fear in it, it's what's the pattern telling me? What's going on here? What am I not seeing? What's my brain
Mm.
trying to tell me? What's my brain recognizing that I can't articulate yet? And if you sort of pause and sit with that for a bit, it often kind of bubbles to the surface. And then once you've got that, you then go, okay, what's my values piece in here? What would my
Mm.
values tell me to do?
Yeah.
So it can
Yeah.
actually be like that it's a decision-making process.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like I know AI and computers are pretty good and they're pretty smart, but
Mm.
I reckon still the most powerful computer in existence is the human brain. And it's constantly calculating stuff that we're not consciously aware of. It's figuring stuff out.
Totally. You know,
Mm.
it's and going back to what you said earlier about instinct plays a big part in it because there's parts of us that are very deeply wired to things that we don't remember anymore.
Mm.
There's the instinct that comes from, and a good example of human instinct is our need to gather in social groups. And the reason for
Yep.
that is that we're not very strong, we're not very fast, we're not covered in protective scales. We're actually quite vulnerable as
Yeah.
individuals, in the natural environment. We put us out in the natural environment, we die pretty quickly. But
Hmm.
there's a lot of safety in groups. And it's not just the safety side of it. We've been incredibly successful in groups. There's a deep human instinct to connect with other humans.
Mm.
And so things like that, we've forgotten the ancient wisdom of it, but it's still there in our brain. It's almost like it's wired into humans. It's part of being human. Is this very ancient wiring that recognizes our place in the natural environment and knows what to do. And we override it so much with this logical thought rather than going, what would my body and brain tell me to do right now?
Mm. Yeah, yeah. So true. Yeah. A lot of people would just kind of be thinking, oh, is this going to be the most profitable thing or not?
Is it the most sensible thing? So as soon as you start asking, it's the most sensible thing,
Yeah.
and I sort of find that when I work with intuition, it's because I've gotten used to it now. I find that if I come up with an idea and I start to flesh it out, if I get really excited about it, that's my tell. That's sort of the thing which I kind of go, okay, this is something that I could really work with. Um,
Mm.
because often, I'm a really busy business person, as I'm sure a lot of listeners would be, and you would be too. You often think of a new idea and then go, I just don't have time to implement that.
Yeah.
And if I was to do that, I wouldn't do any new things because I've got,
Yeah.
you know, it's always going to be more work than there's capacity to deliver on. But that's how
Mm.
I sort of test my ideas. I kind of explore it a little bit and start making notes or mind map it or whatever. And if I start to get excited about it, and my excitement is to the point where I go, I don't care how much work this takes, I'm going to do it. That's when I go, okay, we're doing the thing. Whereas if I sort of come up with an idea and I go, it's a really sensible thing because the market wants certain this and that, and I kind of look at it, and if I sort of look at it and go, I just don't want to do it because it's going to be too hard or it's going to take too much work. You know,
Yeah.
again, that's decision point for me, and it served me well, I have to say. I mean, I've never really had an experience where the exciting idea hasn't turned into something amazing that clients love. And I also have
Mm.
never had an experience where somebody said, "Well, look, I'm not going to work with you anymore because you don't do the boring thing that I kind of rejected." And it's not that it's boring; it's just that I didn't get that again, the intuition, the gut feel that said this could be something really exciting.
Mm. Yeah, it's so interesting to watch the different sorts of feedback you get when you've done something because you felt like it was a good idea versus it was 100% just calculated. And this is actually a good bridge into a thing I wanted to ask you, which we were talking about before I hit record, which was the combination of using data and intuition. Like it's not this or that.
No.
It is valid to have both.
Absolutely. And look, you know, when I say I get excited about an idea, once I've got the concept fleshed out for myself, I always then run it through the sort of lens of what's the data telling me? Like, is this something that I could sell to people? You know, is it something the world needs? Is it something that people would pay for? That kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
Um, and so you do need to do both. It really is
Yeah.
about, because the intuition is data in a way. It's, you know, like I said, tapping into that part of your brain seeing something there, your brain seeing a
Mm.
pattern, your brain seeing something that sparks an interest, and your gut is telling you there's something in this. So what we do with that is, you know, and I think for me, it's been honed by the fact that I've spent so many of my working years in corporate and government that you always have to have a business case to back something up. And I did a
Yeah.
lot of that when I was, particularly in my OD role, because I was a senior leader and my job was to come up with initiatives for the organisation. And I come up with something really cool and exciting and, you know, flesh it out a little bit, talk to a few people, and then I always had to go away and do the business case. So I'm kind
Mm.
of learned how to do the data as well. And one of the things about that, again, though, again, intuition comes into that because one of the things we know about how the human brain works is that we're very, very good at finding data that backs up what we've decided we want to do.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
even when we get data, we can't trust it because we're looking, you know, it's coming to us through that lens of we actively seek out, not deliberately, but your brain does it, actively seeks out the data that confirms the thing that you've already decided to be true. And
Hmm.
it glosses over or even doesn't see the data that disconfirms that. So even when we say we're collecting data and we've got, you know, numbers that back things up, again, we're just if you look at it through a very human lens, it's not infallible data. We're kind of flavoring it with
Mm.
we've decided to do something.
Yeah.
And I think the only way you could truly do that would be to just peel all of the human out of it and maybe just give it to a computer and go, you know, or maybe that's what AI will be really good for in the future is here's this idea. I just want you to test it through a completely unemotional, disconnected, no skin in the game lens to this.
Mm.
But yeah, there is definitely that sort of room for both, but you've got to be, again, aware of your data that you do flavor the data with what you've already decided to do.
Mm. Yeah, that's a fair point. Actually, yeah, I maybe about 5 years ago I started doing Google ads for clients, and I don't really do that so much anymore these days because it's tricky. There's a lot of people who have a real passionate interest in something,
Mm.
a small business idea they really love. And I have to say sorry, no to a lot of people because even though they feel very strongly about their idea and they want to run some advertising for it, I look at the data and say, well, actually, like the population size for the number of people we could target with your product just isn't going to work out.
Mm. Yeah,
That's
three
been
people in the
tricky.
world who want it.
Yeah, exactly.
And none of them have the internet at the moment. Yeah, so it
Yeah,
is, it's tricky. So that's why there's a lot of advantages in having somebody who's not invested in it in any way to do exactly what you've done, which is to say, it's a fantastic idea, but the data just doesn't support it.
yeah.
So that's the value of second opinions and third opinions, I think. And look, again, there's that sort of leaning into the anxiety side of it. People, to sort of flip it, people often don't go ahead with really good things or good ideas because the anxiety of it
Mm.
gets in the way, and they misinterpret the anxiety as their intuition and go, I feel uncomfortable about this, therefore I shouldn't do it. Whereas being
Yeah.
uncomfortable about something is neither good nor bad. It's just telling you something. It's just telling you that maybe you haven't got the information you need to make the decision
Mm.
just yet. And you need
Yeah.
to hit pause on it and do some more digging around before you decide. Or it might be
Mm.
that you explore the source of the anxiety. I did this yesterday with a client who was she's competitive, she's a sports person and heading into a big competition. And her body is just saying no, like she's, missing her personal best by miles. Her trainer keeps saying to her, there's we've got the right nutrition, the right training, there's no reason why you shouldn't be hitting your personal best. And it was her body just saying, no, I don't want to do that. And I said to her, how would it feel if you pulled out of the competition? And she thought about it for a moment and went, I just feel relieved. And,
Mm.
that's the clue for her, is that, all this sort of thing that you'd look at and go, isn't it interesting that she should be hitting personal best and she's just not. And that was her body screaming at her. And that was the
Mm.
intuition screaming at her and going, and look, there's a lot of good reasons. They're very personal reasons I won't go into, obviously, but very personal reasons why the competition is not a good idea for her right now. But it was just really super interesting to sort of walk through the process. And now she hasn't made a decision either way. She's going to go away and really ponder
Okay.
that and go, because I said, you've got to dig deeper you feel relieved now, but if you think about after it and you didn't attend, like after the competition's over and you didn't go, how would you feel then? And so she's got to sort of sit with that for a bit. But that sort of, I think there's a lot of value in really tapping into that more, because she was pushing herself. She was furious with herself. Like, why can't I hit my personal best? I don't get it. Everything's in a row, right nutrition, right amount of rest. I'm sleeping well. I'm taking all the supplements. All
Mm.
the things. The personal trainer, her coach is saying to her, I don't know what the problem is. There's no reason at all why you can't hit PBs. And she's just not. And that's her
Yeah.
body.
It sounds to me like, in a roundabout way, what you're saying is a lot of people need to consider things a little bit more deeply.
Not necessarily more deeply, but just through a different lens, because you can consider things very deeply by just looking at your data,
Mm.
or going, what does research tell me, or what are my competitors doing if you're in business, or what are my clients asking for right now? And you can do a lot of that as well. So it really is, for me, finding that balance of
Mm.
um, what is my intuition telling me, and then balance that with what's the right thing to do when I consider everything, when I consider the data as well, because it isn't an either or, it's a both.
Yeah.
um, and look, I often tell people that when I teach emotional intelligence, that emotions are data. They're telling us something useful, and it's
Yep.
about tapping into that and going, what is it? If I feel anxious about something, what's it telling me? It
Mm.
doesn't mean that it stops you from doing the thing. It's
Yeah.
just a useful piece of data. And again, data can confirm or disconfirm something, but again, it doesn't always stop you or start you. It could be you consider it and then go, I'm going to do it anyway. Or you
Mm.
consider it and go, even though this looks like a fantastic idea on paper, I just don't think it's right for me right now.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably more about being more thoughtful.
Mm. Yeah. So there's a distinction between that and just thinking about it more.
Mm. Yeah, it's being more deliberate's probably not the word I'm looking for, but it's being more attuned is probably a better word
Mm.
for it. That sort of thing of tapping in and going, not just what does my brain think about this, but what does all the other, what does my body say? What does my emotions say? What do all those, like, again, those pattern recognition, intuitive, instinct-based parts of my brain that I tend to shut off? What's that say? If I was to sort of just
Yeah.
pause, go, let's chuck the data in the bin for a minute
Yep.
and go, let's just explore, what are the patterns here? What's my brain telling me? What's my body telling me?
Mm.
And then look at that and go, balance that with what I know to be true from a cognitive perspective. So it's balance of cognition and intuition is ideally what we want.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense.
Hmm. And we do tend to rely on the cognitive side way too much. And look, particularly again, if we sort of tap back to business and corporate and things like that, women tend to, well, leaders in general are getting rewarded for being, data-driven, rational, prepared, decisive, all of those sorts of
Hmm.
things. And we're not in any way recognizing or rewarding the intuitive leaps, the strategic mind. And certainly, like I said, that was been my experience of, you've got a great idea, but then someone says, where's the business case? So immediately your
Yeah.
great idea gets a little bit of the shine rubbed off it because someone's going, now go and do some really boring work with numbers, you know. And so I think it's almost like we need to reclaim intuition as part of a business mindset, as part of a decision-making framework, as part of, again, surfacing that ancient wisdom that, humans have got. We just tend to ignore it most of the time.
Hmm. Yeah, definitely agree with that.
Mm.
Awesome. Okay. Well, this is a great point to wrap up, I think. But thank you, Ros. That has been very beautiful and very informative. Um, and I think there's like plenty of opportunities for us to, um, yeah, explore this more and just, as you said, like I feel like this is kind of a lost thing because, the corporate and business world is dominated by, let's face it, masculine energy, and all the back
Mm.
padding is done on achieving high numbers and things like that.
Mm.
Yeah. So yeah. So could you tell us like uh, if somebody wanted to continue this conversation, how could they do that with you?
Look, I'm on LinkedIn. That's the best place to find me, or through my website. I've got two websites. I've got shapingchange.com.au, which is my consulting and coaching business. And I've also got womensleaderarchetypes.com.au, which is where all the women's leadership stuff sits, the fun stuff. Look, not that the consulting isn't fun, but it's just that's my sort of really,
Hmm.
I suppose my intuitive pull is into that, working with women and helping to support women. And look, I just I think I really want to close by saying that, we need to start treating intuition as a skill, not a gamble. And
Hmm.
what all intuition is doing is it's surfacing things that we already know. It's data, it's patterns, it's things that we've been collecting for decades. Or, if you look at that innate human wisdom, we've been collecting this for millennia. And
Yeah.
it's intuition is just the fastest delivery system for that.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes total sense. And hopefully, yeah, with the work that you're doing, yeah, you're helping people to see that and understand that as well.
Hmm. Yeah, and it's so interesting that women just tap into this. When you start talking about intuition, women just go, yes. And you start talking to men in business, they're like, no, 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 we're not doing that. Too risky. So it's just a different way of looking at it. And I'd love everybody to be able to use it. But yeah, it's one of those things that some people are naturally more wired to listen to it and other people aren't.
Yeah, yeah, so true. And I don't want to say like, it's all women or all men. Like I'm sure there are some men
Definitely
out
not.
there who get
Oh,
this as
totally.
well. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, and some of them, I've worked for some of them in the past, and it's been so interesting watching them navigate corporate because they kind of go, I've got this amazing idea, and everyone goes, where's the business case? And they just don't
Yeah.
do it. They don't have a business case, but because they're senior, they just make it happen. And then it's almost like they'd ask for beg forgiveness rather than ask permission. And
Yeah.
it always amazed me how some people can be so good at that. There's that sort of navigation. I'm just going to do it anyway. I've just drawn a
Mm.
diagram on a paper napkin that I had while I was having my coffee down at the coffee shop at morning tea. And we're going to, this is our new strategy, and we're doing that. And yeah, it's just been, I've really enjoyed working for those sorts of people, but I have had a couple of men I've worked for like that. And the thing that used to amaze me is how, um, yeah, other executives would just go, okay, then. Whereas, for me as a woman, I don't know whether it's just me as a woman or whether it's just, I mean, look, I was in a very male dominated environment, but just that thing of a woman puts it forward, it's like, no, 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 you've got to get the data. Where's the business case?
Yeah.
And this guy rocks up with my boss used to literally write it on a napkin. He'd draw it on a paper napkin and come back and go, here's the new strategy. And he'd take that to the executive table and go, here's the new strategy. And everyone would go, yay, let's do that. So that's a bit of a
Oh.
skill as well. Maybe persuasion combined with intuition.
Mm, that would be incredibly powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, it's fun. Well,
All
thank you for
right.
having me. I've enjoyed the
Yeah.
conversation. Hopefully, your listeners get something out of it too.
Yeah. Sure. Thank you so much for coming on.
My pleasure.
Hey, this is Lou Kozlevcha. I'm a web developer and digital business consultant based in Melbourne, Australia. I help coaches and professionals build websites that position them as trusted experts in their zone of genius. If you're looking for a totally new website or a revamp, this is exactly what I do, and I can help you from beginning to end and even after your website is finished. So if this is something that you could use some help with, do feel free to reach out. This podcast is set up to help small business owners and coaches and professionals get an understanding of digital marketing and websites so that they can make informed decisions before they go down any expensive or complicated rabbit holes. If you thought this episode was helpful, feel free to share it with someone you know. You can find my services and this podcast at loukoz.com, loukoz.com. Thank you for being here, and I look forward to making the internet beautiful with your presence.